Killarney is a long way from Tipperary, but here on the shores of Lough Derg, people feel their councillors too have let the interests of landowners dictate the pace of development. Puckane, with a population of 250, enjoys a tranquil setting, but the residents are seething, and not just because a whopping 105 acres have been rezoned here, but because no one will tell them why.
There's a lack of trust with the system in this community.
They've been working against everything that we requested or proposed.
There's two pertinent questions here. The first one is why, and the second one is who wanted it.
Why would you put hundreds of houses into a scenic village? Why would you do that? Somebody must be gaining in some way from this seemingly inexplicable decision.
The Puckane Development Association represents most of the villagers.
If the amount of redevelopment goes ahead and all of these housing estates and this concrete jungle goes up, I don't know who's going to buy these properties. Local people will be priced out of the housing market. It will be a rat run into the likes of Limerick or even up to Dublin.
It's obvious why developers have their eyes on Puckane, just 25 miles from Limerick, with a motorway coming that will cut the journey to half an hour. When a new local development plan for the Lough Derg region went on display 2 years ago, 230 individual submissions came in, many, not surprisingly, from landowners seeking to have their land zoned.
We asked the councillors who was pushing for all this zoning, and they'll all say, oh, I was getting 3 or 4 phone calls, but if you ask any one of them to say who, none of them will say. So they're telling us in one way that they're under pressure, and when you ask them who, then they don't. They're just not telling.
A key player in events here is Fine Gael councillor and auctioneer Tom Berkery.
Landowners, as any other individuals, have right to make a submission, and they would always make submissions on proposed zoning, naturally enough. But I do feel they have the right to do so, but we haven't come under any undue pressure from people like that.
The biggest submission by far came from Christy Hayes and John Comerford, who wanted 31 acres on the edge of Puckane rezoned. But the county manager said there were already sufficient land zoned and described this proposal as unwarranted, unsustainable and inappropriate. He pointed to public concern and noted that the councillors agreed with him. So here at least it looked like victory for the residents.
The public in this stage had felt that they had done their job. They had protected Puckane. And all of a sudden, when councillors went back to their rooms, they changed the plan. They changed the goalposts.
The residents spent that Christmas believing they'd excluded this massive area from their development plan. But when the maps went back on display in January, the land was inexplicably included and zoned mostly for housing.
There was changes that happened which brought into, there was a huge amount of extra land brought in, a massive amount of extra land, and that rang all kinds of alarm bells.
What occurred was a massive coup for the landowner, but as so often happens when development plans are being drawn up, there is no public record of who met whom or of what transpired, and residents blame their councillors.
I didn't realise the power those guys have when it comes to rezoning land, and the way the system is skewed at the moment towards councillors.
I don't trust them to do it because we're left really in the dark as to if it starts, where is it going to end?
To any of the individuals that we were talking to, I was not at any stage of the opinion that anybody was in the dark upon what was happening.
Councillor Berkery played a central role in getting the 31 acres proposed for rezoning, although he seems reluctant to admit it, claiming only to have supported the manager's proposals.
North Tipperary County Council, as 21 members of the council, adopted the manager's report. So it was the planning office and the manager of North Tipperary County Council that proposed the zoning of this document for a finish. It wasn't individual councillors proposed. We endorsed the proposal put forward by the manager.
The councillors did endorse a manager's report, but what Councillor Berkery didn't mention is that the report they endorsed had been radically altered before they endorsed it, and Councillor Berkery was at the centre of it. Documents obtained by Primetime under the Freedom of Information Act show that just 3 days before Christmas, councillors Berkery and Harrington proposed to a council meeting that they make a development plan otherwise than as recommended in the manager's report. The new plan, they said, was a material alteration of the county manager's proposal. And the biggest alteration of all was the inclusion in the plan of the 31 acres that had been deemed unwarranted just weeks before. A spokesman for the landowners told us, "We have no idea why the councillors changed their minds."
Immense value is added in a development plan, and which is all the more reason why that process has to be extremely transparent. But it has huge consequences in terms of what it delivers and how it relates to the community that it affects.
But transparency is far from evident in this case, where councillors who at first agreed the land in question was inappropriate for zoning quickly changed their minds.
I'm asking you by what process that change of mind was brought about. Who you met, where you met, were officials present, where are the minutes of those meetings?
Well, I could categorically state that I personally had no meetings with any of the landowners during that, after that period of time, after the meeting we had in which their position was put on the table, but the senior planner here would have had further meetings with those people.
The planner told us he remained firmly against rezoning this land and only met the landowners under direct instructions from councillors who he says were determined to rezone this land, thereby bringing the grand total to 105 acres.
The mystery for me as a journalist is, despite this, months and months of statements from the Puckane Development Association seeking answers from the council through the public media of the Nina Guardian, the councillors have not come back and given an explanation as to why all of this land was rezoned. Not an adequate explanation anyway.
North Tipperary's county manager has stated that due process was followed in adopting the plan, but the only substantial reason given by councillors for what they did here is that the landowners agreed to upgrade Puckane's sewerage system. But should public works like sewerage be bartered for inappropriate land zonings? What happened to public tendering? And are private negotiations an acceptable substitute for a see-through process?
The whole system is not transparent enough. It's too susceptible to outside influence. It's too susceptible to private interests coming in and outweighing the common good and public interest.
The community have no chance to challenge major decisions like this. There is no inquiry system in the Irish Planning Act built into it, so there's no check. There's no check on the excesses to which this can occur. You cannot get that practice examined. You cannot sit down in a forum and ask pertinent questions as a member of a community as to how and when that happens.
The people of Puckane can expect no help from John Gormley because his authority doesn't stretch to local